If you haven't been living under a rock recently, you know about what's going on in the Middle East, especially Palestine. And if you're like me, you've been on Twitter watching it every day, just seeing all the horrors committed, the war crimes, the genocide. And honestly, it's hard to even go on Twitter nowadays, because every time I open it, I'm just horrified with more and more videos of innocent people, children, just being brutally attacked and dehumanized. And what makes my blood really boil is TikToks like this absolutely dehumanizing them. From boasting about dropping bombs on innocent people to showing pictures of people's private belongings, it's just absolutely vile and hard to watch. And you'll have people celebrating it, the destruction of another people, by saying that's what they deserve because Hamas.
נועה, תראי, רותם קנח שרשרת חדשה, made in Gaza, made in Gaza.
And the thing is about the Zionists who support this genocide is that it comes from both sides of the spectrum, left and right. What it really showed was the hypocrisy in our countries, the Western countries, America, Europe, who like to pat themselves on the back about being the defenders of human rights and people, and love to talk about it when it comes to places like Ukraine. But when it comes to Palestine, it's Israel defending itself. 30,000 dead is defending himself.
In Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank, a soldier smokes and mocks Palestinian detainees. The Israeli army says it will investigate the videos, but almost every day more emerge, often shot by the soldiers themselves.
Just like the debunked narratives that's repelling, you know, the Hamas beheading babies and using sexual violence as a tool to achieve their goals, that's all been debunked. And you're probably wondering where this even come from in the first place. So basically, a bunch of mainstream news articles published a story, specifically the New York Times, and later on it was debunked that they hired an Israeli with barely any journalism experience to write the story and peddle that propaganda. And all these other Western news articles picked it up and ran with it.
The principal criticism lies within the main claim, which is that not only did sexual assault and occasions of rape occur, but that they were used systematically. Since that report has been published, major flaws have emerged, not just in the contents itself, but also when it comes to the actual journalists and authors behind the report.
Alternative U.S. news outlets, subscriber-funded ones like Mondovice, Electronic Intifada, and The Gray Zone went to work debunking the Times' story. They noted the article contained zero direct testimony from victims, that the alleged eyewitnesses the paper quoted were either anonymous or of dubious credibility, that the family of a woman killed on October 7th disputed the Times' assertion.
And later on it was debunked, but the damage had already been done. And this wasn't the only one. They used another false narrative for the United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency by saying they were collaborating with Hamas. And that completely turned out to be debunked. And now Western countries are restarting their aid to that agency. Before we even talk about the next topic, I already know what the Zionists are saying. Oh, you're anti-Semitic, you're this, you're that. And no, being pro-Palestine does not mean you're anti-Semitic, because Zionists don't represent all of Judaism. And I know there are a lot of Jews who support Palestine and want them to have happiness and freedom too. And honestly, throwing that word out there for anyone who disagrees with you is sad, because there's actual anti-Semites out there actually peddling false propaganda about Jewish people. I've covered people like that before in my videos, those incel type of dudes.
The Jews have fucked up your economy when Starbucks goes out of business and Asian people are now doing DoorDash.
If you saw in the news, you heard about Aaron Bushnell, the U.S. Air Serviceman who lit himself on fire in a former protest against the Israeli government ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people. And it was literally the ultimate sacrifice.
Sorry. You know, that post, I think spoke to me and many people who had to really look at what they were doing and whether, you know, for me, I have a young daughter, and I thought about in the future, if she were to ask me, you know, what were you doing when this was happening? You were at the State Department. I want to be able to tell her that I didn't stay silent.
Rest in peace to Aaron. His heart was too big for this world. He really did care about Palestinians. And seeing people online just saw him some mentally ill person who needed help is fucking sad and just a dishonor to his memory. And I'm talking about influencers like Destiny making fun of him a few days after his death. Like, I get it, he's supposed to be some edgy ass dude or something, but his whole views on the whole situation, it just shows you the type of character he is.
And if the Hamas is hiding behind civilians, civilians die.
Every time they target a kid, I'm sure they believe it's Hamas. When they killed the 4 kids
they believe.
Yeah, I know they believed it, even though they were diminutive size. Even though they were diminutive.
That angle, you don't see the size.
Yeah, no, they saw.
You don't see the size.
Let's leave it aside.
Oh, I know what he's quoting here, but you've lied about this particular instance in the past. Those kids weren't just on the beaches as Opera stated in articles. Those kids were literally coming out of a previously identified Hamas compound that they have operated from. They literally
Mr. Borelli, with all due respect, you're such a fantastic moron. It's terrifying. That wharf was filled with journalists. There were scores of journalists. That was an old fisherman's shack. What are you talking about? It's so painful. It's so painful to listen to this idiocy.
And to be clear, on the other side, you're implying...
Like, it's bad when Hassan has a better view of the Palestine situation than you do. I don't even like Hassan, but I agree with him on his Palestinian statements. I do commend him for donating tens of thousands of dollars to Palestinian aid agencies. That's a good thing. While we're talking about Palestine, we can't forget about what's happening in the West Bank. While the world is busy focusing on Gaza, Israel is quietly building even more settlements on occupied land. This year alone had the most settlements and the most amount of violence from settlers against Palestinians. Ever since October 7th, it's increased even more, with settlers being given near immunity to do whatever they want to Palestinians. That means more violence, more prisoners, more people being kicked out of their homes. What's even more horrifying is a few days ago on TikTok, I saw that real estate groups in New Jersey and Canada are selling settlement homes in the West Bank, occupied territory they recognize belonging to Palestinians, that are being sold in impunity and only Jewish people are allowed to go to.
On March 10th, there is scheduled to be an Israeli real estate sales event at the Keter Torah Synagogue. That event violates both domestic law and international law.
And we haven't even gotten to the worst of it yet. Besides the atrocities committed in the West Bank, there's an ongoing famine in Gaza right now, especially in the north, where people are literally starving. You can see videos of malnourished children, and this is because Israel is blocking the shipments from coming in, especially in the north. There's also videos of Zionists blocking aid from coming in and celebrating it like they're doing some good thing or something.
Border as they have for 6 weeks. Their mission to block international aid from crossing into Gaza. The border police are waiting for them.
The population. This is intelligence only for terror. That's why they should get only the minimum calories required to survive.
They're starving to death.
They are not
starving. They are starving to death.
You know what? If they are starving to death, give the hostages back.
Like how brainwashed you have to be to celebrate blocking aid to thousands of children and people who need it the most. Some countries are airdropping food into Gaza right now, but that's nothing compared to what they need right now. And the US, which only recently allowed a ceasefire to go through, finally I guess, but Israel isn't doing anything about it. They're still planning to continue with the Rafah assault and push even more people into a tiny humanitarian zone for millions of people. Think about that. It looks like the UN Security Council even calling for a ceasefire doesn't have any effect on Netanyahu. He's hell-bent on destroying Gaza and committing this genocide. It truly is sad times we're living in. This shows you the absolute dark side of humanity. And it's hard to even go on social media nowadays because of the horrifying things you see. But it's important to continue supporting Palestine and donating to aid organizations and attending your local rallies. It really puts the pressure on our government that they're not alone, that we can help them. At the end of the day, this conflict didn't start on October 7th. It's been going on for generations. Cycle of violence that's been going on since 1948. And at the end, it's innocent civilians who are affected the most on both sides, Israelis and Palestinians. I one day there can be peace and Palestinians can have their own home without being treated like second-class citizens. Until then, we have to keep going, keep raising our voice for them. It was a long video, but I had a lot to say. Thanks for watching, guys, and peace.